Welcome back, it's me, Lou. Today will be a special video as we showcase a special custom action figure that I created. Alright, before the big reveal, we're going to talk a little bit about the character. So, I'm a big fan of the Green Lantern character known as Simon Baz. Truth be told, when they first introduced the character years ago, I was very lukewarm to Simon. I kind of felt that the Earth already had too many Green Lantern characters to protect it. We had Hal Jordan, we had Guy Gardner, we had John Stewart, we had Kyle Rayner, we had Alan Scott. And for me, the idea of another Green Lantern character seemed a little bit excessive. To make things even worse, what bothered me was the fact that this Green Lantern felt the need to carry around a pistol, which we see right here. It wasn't until a year or two later when they paired the character up with fellow Green Lantern Jessica Cruz that Simon really began to grow on me. And since then, it's a character I've become very fond of, and one that I'm hoping McFarlane Toys gives us an action figure sooner than later. So this is Simon Baz. As you can tell, there's some differences between his costume and those other fellow Green Lanterns. For one, he has short sleeves. He has a really weird looking, almost like dungeon gimp mask, which always kind of bothered me. He has a lot of lime green, yellow piping throughout his costume as well. But the one thing that really stood out, as I mentioned earlier, was the addition of a pistol. The reason why Simon carried around a pistol is because during his rookie years as a Green Lantern, he didn't put his trust fully in the powers of the ring, and he always kind of felt like his gun would be kind of like his dependable go-to weapon in the event that, the ring couldn't deliver the goods. So he was always still dependent on the firearm. But in time, he kind of grew into his own character, and he no longer needed the pistol. And he relied solely on his Green Lantern power ring. So here is the early rendition of the character. And over here is another illustration of Simon. This is kind of like a full view of his suit. This illustration here is done by artist Jim Lee. As you can see, he has his pistol, a holster, sleeveless or a short-sleeved shirt, and I think he had fingerless gloves. Yeah, he had fingerless gloves. So this is a figure I'm really waiting for. So far, McFarlane has given us two versions of John Stewart. There was the first release and the second release with the Build-A-Figure piece. The second release was slightly different in that it had a pair of green hands as opposed to the first release, which just had the gauntlets and the black gloves. We got Kyle Rayner recently, and we got Hal Jordan, which came in the 2-pack. So, in order to make a Simon Baz Green Lantern figure, I needed a base body to work with. So, I kind of felt this was kind of the easiest go-to, using the Green Lantern John Stewart body. For one, most importantly, it's already giving me a body that has a Green Lantern uniform. So for me, a lot of the heavy lifting was already done. I just had to find a way to take this and convert it into Simon Baz. So for me, the first challenge was finding a new head and doing what I could to modify the costume as much as possible, just so it would no longer look like the John Stewart figure and so that it looked like its own thing. I knew going into this project that I wouldn't be able to create a one-to-one exact replica of Simon Baz's costume. So much like my other costumes, this was going to be much more of an approximation. Using my limited skill set and the parts I had available to me, I was going to do the best I could to try to create a version of Simon Baz that I felt was, passable. And here is my result. I introduced to you my version of the DC Multiverse Green Lantern Simon Baz action figure. So right now his emblem's kind of washed out with the light, but I assure you it's there. It's Simon as how I interpret the character, as you can see. So I tried to do as much as possible, like I said, just so it would be very, very different from the John Stewart figure that we see right here. For one, I changed out the head. For the head, I used a Marvel Legends Jan Rog Kree Star Force head. And that was from the live-action Captain Marvel movie. If you remember that, they never gave us helmetless Jude Law action figure from Captain Marvel. The one we did get had the helmet. And I kind of thought it was ironic to use a Star Force helmet just because the Kree Star Force are almost kind of like the equivalent of the Green Lantern Corps. They're kind of similar to the Nova Corps also, but, the fact that they, flew around in, like, green jumpsuits that were very reminiscent of the Green Lantern costumes, I kind of felt it was very appropriate to use that head. So I used the Star Force Kree head, and I just repainted it. So Simon Baz has a black helmet, or in the costume has a black mask. He has a black mask with a green eye covering over it, and then he also has like a hint of green towards the chin strap. So for me, I knew that my helmet looked a little bit different because for one, it was a helmet and not a mask. And my logic behind this is that the aesthetic for my Simon Baz was going to be more like something that was more video game inspired. For example, if you've played the Injustice video games, either Injustice 1 or Injustice 2 on the Xbox or PlayStation, you'll know that the superhero costumes in there, they're not the traditional spandex. They're much more like body armor, which is kind of the same approach that Rocksteady Studios took with Arkham Knight, Arkham City, Arkham Origins line of Batman video games. Like in those Arkham games, Batman's wearing like heavy armor, and in the Injustice games, a lot of the superheroes likewise are wearing heavy armor, including even like the Hal Jordan Green Lantern. So my reasoning behind this costume is that it was going to feel more like armor than like, the traditional spandex look, which we see in the comic book. So for me, Simon Baz was wearing a helmet, and it gave me a chance to change the design a little bit. I wasn't very fond of the weird gimp mask that he wore in the comic books. So for me, this design felt a little bit more appropriate. It's a little bit more in line with like live action MCU Captain America. And I just made sure that, the parts I colored were kind of true in the position and in the shape of the original costume design. So the eye mask that's green, I try to keep it within the same shape and the same parameters as the original design. Likewise, same with the chin strap right here. The one thing it's missing is the lime green like trim and piping that runs through the forehead, but I left it off because, truth be told, I don't think my skill set, I'm not that great of a painter, so I don't think I would have the proper skills to execute that cleanly. As you can see here, I also changed up the design on the body. So I extended the green on the chest and ran it down his abdomen, similar to how it is in the original comic book design. Likewise, I painted the neck and shoulders black, like the original comic book, as well as the upper arms. As we come down to the figure, just for the hell of it, I wanted to give him more armor just to balance him out. So I gave him some armor on his hips, and those have the Green Lantern logos on the side. I gave him his pistol and his holster. And to further armor up the character, I gave him knee pads and some additional details on the boots. just to change them out from the original figure. So for the most part, I think I was able to get away with, changing the original figure design as much as possible so that it's different enough. It's still in line with, the Jon Stewart figure, but it's kind of its own unique costume now, especially with the addition of different parts. And also the mid-torso is a completely different piece as well. If you look carefully, the abdomen area and the hips are a completely different sculpt. And the reason is that the abdomen, the mid-torso piece, and the crotch piece here, and the upper hips, these are all Marvel Legend pieces. So what happened was, originally this figure, I sacrificed it and cannibalized it to make my custom McFarlane Hush action figure. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But when I did, I gave away the mid-torso and the pelvic region away just to make my Hush figure. So that left me with the chest and just the legs and the arms. So I had to dig around my parts bin, and the only thing I had left to fill the gap was a Marvel Legends torso. So I cut it down and shaved it until it fit. So here it is. Alright, I'm going to move this aside just so we can run a comparison to the original drawings. And we're going to come back to the Jim Lee drawing just so I could kind of do a side-by-side comparison. So unfortunately, my design does not have the short sleeves. I think the only reason why that is that I couldn't find like bare flesh arms to use with this figure. The only one that kind of came to mind was the Mortal Kombat Liu Kang action figure. And I didn't really want to invest any more money just to make this one figure. So I kind of just had to make do with what I had. And it's kind of chalk it up to the fact that this was a custom. So since it was a custom, I got to design them myself and, kind of change the design so it's, unique to this figure alone. But I still wanted to retain the certain elements so that, if you saw it, you'd still know it's Simon Baz. But I think the big giveaway is the pistol and the holster. The mask isn't perfect just because if you look at the original design, the forehead and the nose, they slope together as one piece. It doesn't dip down into the canyon between the bridge of the nose, much like mine. But I still tried to retain the same kind of color scheme, and I kind of extended the mask so that it went over the nose and on the upper cheeks. It's not perfect, but for me, as I always say, it's just kind of more so like an approximation. And this is really just more so a filler or a proxy until McFarlane gives us a real Simon Baz figure. So, in no ways is this a perfect, custom. It's really just a placeholder. And it was a fun project. It was something I wanted to tackle and see if I can do. And if I really wanted to also, I can easily do a head swap and just say it's a generic Green Lantern character. It doesn't have to be anyone specific. If you've read the Green Lantern comic books, the Green Lantern Corps is made up of thousands of members. So this was pretty much just my attempt at making Simon Baz. So real quick, let's do one last pass and take a look at the action figure. So here is an up-close portrait shot. We have a nice shot of his face. One important detail that this guy lacks as opposed to the original design is that in the comic books you can actually see Simon's pupils. For mine, I just kind of left the lenses white. I didn't feel like I was at a high enough level to be able to paint the pupils cleanly, so I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to leave them white. Why not? I was really happy with the stripes running down the torso because they come to a nice sharp point and they're pretty even on both sides. That was kind of a challenge considering I had to freehand that. I'm still very surprised that I was able to get the Marvel Legends torso to work with the McFarlane chest. for one, they're different scales, and I got it to be, it's not a perfect clean fit, but it's good enough. If you didn't know any better, you wouldn't even think twice about it. And yeah, this is my Simon Baz. The hip guards are actually taken from the John Stewart figure. It's from the energy armor. I just cut the pieces and trimmed what I needed. Repainted it with some opaque green and just glued them onto the hips. The holster is from G.I. Joe Classified Series Duke, as is the sidearm. The knee pads are taken from Gotham Knights Robin. I just glued them on above the boots, and it works really well. Likewise, if you didn't know this didn't come with the figure, you wouldn't know any better. I think it's a very natural and perfect fit. So yeah, here is Simon Baz, the Green Lantern of Earth. All I need now is a Jessica Cruz figure, and I think I'm good to go. They've introduced a couple of new Earth Green Lantern characters, and I'm sure in due time, McFarlane's going to give us those as well. All right, so let's wrap this video up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I will see you at the next one. All right, later.